Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Open Forum podcast. Today, I'm very pleased to say we have a returning guest, Elana Freeland. For those of you who are familiar from the previous episode Elana was on, she's an expert in geoengineering and has spent the last little while also diving far deeper into the element of transhumanism. That's going to be the bulk of today's topic, but we're going to have to transition over to the transhumanism from the geoengineering element. We're going to discuss what's going on with the human body and why this idea of transhumanism isn't so sweet as we might be told as chips in the brain that are going to make us compute faster or things that are going to make us live longer, that there is potentially a nefarious element going on here. But Alana, that's enough from me. Welcome back. Thank you very much for giving us some of your time.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, take it away. So, geoengineering, how's that taken us into transhumanism? Where's the link?
Well, I've spent 15 years on this. It was completely unforeseen. It's just that I worked with a scientist named Clifford Carnicom, who was very dedicated to collecting data and translating what turns out to be a national security state issue, which is geoengineering. Now, that's very highly classified. Believe it or not, you can't even find out the formula for the jet engine propulsion biofuel or whatever they're using. You can't get hold of it. You can't find out. So I have spent years writing 4 books. I didn't know I'd write 4 books. Each book sort of gave birth to the next one because each level I went down, starting with the chemtrails, of course, the trails in the sky, which were not contrails and still are not contrails. They are very much chemical trails. But finding various agendas involved in this, not just weather engineering, which now is a done deal. That's completely controlled now globally. And is there any natural weather? Not that I know of. Now, there are things. I was looking today at a wonderful Brit, Harry Rhodes. I don't know if your listeners have heard of him, but I met Harry at a conference many years ago, and he has developed, he has furthered the technology that can actually remove the chemical sky from your area. And that all goes back to Wilhelm Reich, who was a physician, but spent a lot of his time examining the atmosphere when he moved to Maine in the United States. And from him, there have been various efforts made. Trevor Constable comes to mind. Trevor Constable was a Navy man who was able to do the same thing that Reich had done. Both of them went to the Mojave Desert here in the United States, very dry, barren, and they took infrared photographs of the sky. And in those infrared photos, when they were developed, this was in the 50s and 40s, you see these creatures. Is the only, to me, it looked a lot like when I was in biology in undergrad days, looking through my microscope at microbes, because these things that they were photographing that are in our sky, we can't see them because they're made of plasma, would be my guess. And plasma is said to be the fourth state of matter. I would argue that it's actually the first state of matter, but I don't want to go into that today.
That's a deeper
So
scientific discussion than I think
Oh, yeah. And
we've
I'm
got time
very
for.
into plasma because
Yeah.
a lot of plasma experiments are going on in our sky right now because the people in geoengineering, the scientists there, and then perhaps even the elite occultists who are running the geoengineering for a variety of things that we're going to get to today, they know about these creatures. This is not news to them. But they have the machinery now by which they can see it. Remember, the electromagnetic spectrum is very, for us, the human being, is very narrow.
We only see about 5% of it, if I'm not mistaken. And
Not
I
even,
mean,
I don't think there's even that much. I mean, it's just this narrow aperture in the very middle between the way out there is gamma rays, and way out over here are radio waves and microwaves. So we can only see a very tiny aperture of this world. And to say that the material things you see are all there is, well, ignorant on one hand and nonsense on the other. So if you have the right machinery, though, you can see that there are these entities in our atmosphere. And that bit does it have to do with the weather engineering? Well, no, not really. It calls on the secret space program to delineate what those creatures are and what their purpose here is. And I'm sure that's all being pursued. What you get is the disinformation story of it's from off-planet creatures coming from Alpha Centauri or wherever. I don't think I need to at all go off-planet for much of anything
what
that's
about
happening now.
alternative dimensions? What if they were being,
Alternative dimensions and frequencies. That's
yeah,
exactly what I would say.
right.
And but we just need to educate ourselves as to our options. And we can't look to our leaders or our public schools or private schools. We really can't look to these people because so much of this is now classified in the United States. I realize other countries don't have that terrible classification system that we have in this national security state, covered up by democracy, freedom,
Ah,
la la.
I could go
So
on at no end for the whole secrecy and
yeah,
whatnot, and the acts that have been acted out to keep things hidden from us. But
exactly. Like,
you've gone quite deep very quickly, so I'm just going to pull back for those that are unfamiliar, and just gloss over in broad strokes some of the things that you've mentioned. So, geoengineering, weather engineering. Geoengineering is the process by which, whether it's by chemtrails or by something like the HARP array that's in Alaska, and there's a few others in Norway and a few other places, we are able to control the cloud layer. And by controlling the cloud layer, you can control what weather patterns are going to occur, whether that is something happening, even something so much as an earthquake or a tsunami, to rain or stopping rain, as is the drought that's been happening in California for some time. Then we get the particles in the sky. Now, there's an element of particles in the sky. I think we spoke about it the last time as well, in all of the chemicals that are being sprayed out that are then landing on the soils around us. So Kristen Megan is a Air Force whistleblower who's done soil sample analysis and found that there are elements here that aren't naturally found on their own, but actually they're found in these chemicals that I'm being told to sign off for. Something's not right here. And further above that are these other particles, where we're talking about beings potentially from an alternate dimension or beings operating on an alternate wavelength within where we are now. And that sounds quite out there for people. But again, to hone in on what you said earlier, we see this tiny speck of the spectrum around us. If we were to be able to see more, let's say we could see in radio frequencies, we'd see all the 5G, the 4G, the 3G, our television signals beaming all around us. We can fire up an app on the phone, and I know you don't use a mobile phone, but you can fire up an app on your mobile phone and it can see all the different frequencies of the Wi-Fi bands around you, let alone everything else. So before you think to yourself, this sounds a bit off kilter, keep that factor in mind. There is so much around us that we just can't see, we just can't touch. I can't touch the radio frequency around me any more than I can see that frequency around me. So when we're saying this, there's a reason that these chaps were using infrared cameras to get hold of them, or get hold of them to finally
image them. Yeah,
visualize.
give
Yeah,
an image.
yeah. But sorry, continue.
No, that's great. That's great. You filled in a lot of things. Thanks for reining me in there. So just to name the 7 basic operations going on through geoengineering, the classified project. We mentioned weather engineering. That's really number one, because if you can control the atmosphere, but to control the atmosphere, one thing you didn't mention, but I know you alluded to, is electromagnetics. The electromagnetics now are considerable in the planet. As you know, we're now entirely wireless, except for a few people here and there who are waking up to how dangerous the wireless electromagnetism really is. And particularly the 5G, 6G, and now they're developing the 7G. That all has to do with smaller and smaller and smaller waves for a very particular purpose of control, which I'm going to get to in a moment, because you alluded to that too. So the second operation, besides weather engineering, is chemical and electromagnetic. There's a lot of experiments going on up there. You're usually told the sun is doing this, that, and the other, when really it's not. It's all geoengineered experimentation going on. We have planetary and geophysical operations going on, such as the fire in Maui and what has recently happened in North Carolina as a geoengineered weather event. So these are all going on, but they're being called something different so that the public doesn't understand. These are real agendas, real operations, and they're very important to the secret space program, would be what I would say is the bottom line here in geoengineering. Then there's the directed energy weapons, which is really interesting to me, because we used to think of them as sort of Star Wars types of things, of zapping up there in the upper atmosphere. But now this idea of DEWs, directed energy weapons, is really much vaster and much wider. And I would say that's really my purpose in this whole thing about geoengineering. Is I take these things that it is connected to under the secret space program, and I try to show how all of these things have to do with each other. You don't have an electromagnetic thing over here, and you have a nanotechnology thing over here. You have actually these things all working together. It's like a great orchestra of technologies that we study here on the Earth. Maybe we're involved in an activist group, and we're very concerned about the electromagnetics. So we're studying 5G and what's the impact of 5G? Does it produce cancer? Does it produce this, that, and the other? How are our children handling a wireless environment? That sort of thing. But really, what I try to do is to really point to all the different things that are now working together to absolutely control, under what the military calls the doctrine of full spectrum dominance, the entire planet. And that's just the beginning, because Kardashev, what was he? He was an astronomer in Soviet Russia. He laid out the idea that for a true space age, you would have to be able to first control your planet, all aspects, full spectrum dominance. When I say full spectrum dominance, we're talking about the electromagnetic spectrum, that it's entirely controlled. Then the second thing Kardashev said was you would have to control your star, which is our sun. You would have to control all the operations having to do with the sun. And it so happens that the sun is entirely plasma. So that's why they work so hard on plasma, not just for the entities that are in our environment, and which, by the way, depend upon the solar rays that are coming down, just like we do. But you would have to then, the next thing Kardashev says after you control your planet and you control your sun is then you control your planetary system. That would be all of our 7 planets. And then, of course, the entire galaxy. I mean, it sounds like when I first heard this, I thought, wow, these guys think big. But this is ongoing now. This
It's
is
all
what's going
tangible.
on.
It's all absolutely tangible.
Absolutely. You
We
don't
have
need to import any aliens.
no,
You
we
really
have
don't.
Musk talking about Mars all the time. We've sent probes
Yeah.
to all these other planets. You know,
But
this is all well within reach.
there's one thing that has really prevented them from being able to, it's like the 1969 moon event. Well, it never happened. It was completely filmed by Stanley Kubrick with a green screen. And why wasn't it done? Why didn't we go? Well, we didn't have the technology, but more important than that, we didn't have control over our atmosphere and the human body. The human body cannot handle the radiation of the Van Allen belts on the way out and the way back in. We would be radiated to death. And if we just turned to lead as a way, it's just too heavy. There's too much weight. So they had to really sort of go a timeout, is how I picture it. I'm sure it wasn't like that for them. But now you need to look at the human body and what you could do to enhance the human body so that it can handle radiation. And that's really one of the major points that led them to the singularity event, talking about transhumanism and enhancing the human body to make it able to handle radiation. And that's what I say in two of my books, the last one in particular, Geoengineered Transhumanism, where I talk about radiation and the fact that many of these accidents at nuclear installations or fuel rods disrupting, blowing up this and that. Chernobyl, we have a whole bunch of them. Even before the Fukushima was probably the most destructive of all because it's now in the Pacific Ocean and on the west coast of the United States, etc. All this was to get us accustomed to radiation. The gamma rays now that have been measured on the planet, and that's ongoing. I think you can find a chart somewhere on the net where you can read the latest measurements, is exploding. It's phenomenally over the top now. And so we are, and that's the cell phones. That has to do with all of the, not just ionized radiation, but non-ionized radiation. All of this radiation, like with little children having their own cell phones and living in a wireless environment and all this is to change the human body and to get it prepared in a way that it could actually handle leaving the planet and coming back and exploring our small dimension of the galaxy. So this was all on their minds. What do you want to say? I see you're going.
I was going to say for those who want to just dismiss out of hand due to what you mentioned about the moon, before you do that, one of the things to keep in mind is, as you say, we didn't have the technology then. And what's really interesting is when you hear NASA, and it's NASA that are saying this, they say that we lost the technology to go to the moon. That's why we haven't been back. That's the
Hilarious.
reason we haven't been back. That you're talking about one of the greatest quote unquote achievements.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imaginations.
For humankind, and somehow they lost that technology and haven't been able to replicate it. You then have interviews with certain people from NASA that genuinely say, yeah, working on this technology could be the first time that we go to the moon. And these are interviews that are done in the 2000s or the 2010s. So as you say, that there's a lot to factor in here. There's the whole reason that we're being exposed to all of this radiation. That sends us further and further down the other element of the rabbit hole, then that transhumanism element. I do want to come towards the Musk part of this, because he often talks about, wanting to take people to Mars or wanting to take people here, there, everywhere. He is a big proponent of transhumanism. But what exactly is transhumanism? Like, if we can put a definition so that everyone's working on the same level here.
Well, let's not do a definition. Let's do a characterization, because it's got multiple aspects. I mean, all of us are now undergoing a transhuman change because of what's in the atmosphere from the chemical trails. It turns out that the chemical trails that I used to study, understanding it was a military operation. And it was for all these. And let me just finish the last three, okay?
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
After the directed energy weapons, which is a very large subject that goes all the way from in the upper atmosphere down to here on Earth, where they can triangulate satellite coverage for mind control and targeting of individuals or entire swaths of humanity. By utilizing the cell towers, which are really microwave towers, the cell phone, which is a weapon system, and why I don't own one, and satellite. These have to be looked at as dual use technologies. On the one hand, there are conveniences, and we love them. We love these technologies that have fast movie downloads and all that stuff. But we don't understand the military aspect, because this is a national security issue, and they're not going to just tell you. You're going to have to go digging on your own, which is why I have the books out that I have. So if we look at that fact, and that is a fact, it's all dual use technology, then the idea that they would utilize our 60 hertz in the wall, 50 for you, I think, and they would utilize our cell phones, and they would utilize the Internet of Things and the Internet of Bodies and the Internet of Nano Things, that they would use all this as energy sources, as energy transmission capability for whatever their purposes are. That's going on. It has to. It's like, we have to get over the fact that all these experts and everything we've adulated for a long time are really working on their science by utilizing us as guinea pigs. And that's just how it is. Now, there might be, a guy working at, for example, NASA, which, by the way, lies all the time. It might be a good guy working there. It's a good career move, and he feels sad that people have to be used in such a way. But he has admitted that there is no way around it, that they're going to have to do certain things in order to have this full spectrum dominance over the planet. So, that's the kind of people we're dealing with who are at the top. And I think we need to stop wringing our hands and whining about it, that they just don't care about us, and admit that, it's true. They don't care about us, but they care about what the science is able to do for the planet. So with that said, the next one is understandable, that the surveillance is so good now, so good that they can read a postage stamp. I think that was the last thing I ever read about it, from 200 miles in space. Then there's, with the surveillance, is neural manipulation. That's just a fancy way of saying mind control. And that is done easily, as long as they get your brain signature, which they call your evoked potential. If they have that number, then they can track you all over the planet, and they can, send that voice to skull technology into your head, and no one around you will hear it but you. So, that's the fifth operation. The sixth one is the one I'm working on very steadily now, and that I have named digital biology, nanotechnology, and transhumanism. They're all kind of together. And what digital biology means is that we've had molecular biology up until recently. We've depended on microscopes in order to see the molecules, and we have atomic science that can separate atoms and do things with it, like the Manhattan Project showed us. But the digitalizing of biology is a very interesting thing because, as you know, one of the large arguments going on, there are quite a few large arguments going on, but this is one that the idea that you can have a molecule and you can find out its frequency, and then you can transmit that frequency as an actual number to somewhere else or someone else and bring about disease without having anything to do with the molecule being there, the physical molecule of the pathogen that you've probably created through gain of function on your way to your patent that will make a lot of money for you. That's hard for us to wrap our heads around. That you can, but if you think about it, you think how the frequencies of things really affect us. And the frequency is, yes, it is electromagnetic, but it is not really, okay, you can think of it as a particle or a wave and that sort of thing, but it's not really what we used to have, where you had an actual molecular or entity that you were dealing with. This is what we're doing now. We're almost entirely now, I would say, that's my own impression, we're almost entirely shifted from molecular biology to digital biology. And
I would say on that element of frequency, we are frequency beings at the end of the day. We are just energy. We are vibrations. We use it in speech. We say someone comes in with good vibes or bad vibes. When someone walks into a room, if they're a happy, cheery person and they're feeling in that happy, cheery mood, their vibe brings up the energy. And then if you have someone who is more of a negative, a Debbie Downer, what have you, their attitude will bring the vibe down in a particular place. I work in healthcare. You can sense that when you walk into certain rooms. You can feel people's energy as you talk to them. You can feel their frequency. So to say that, if we think of a frequency as a signature, and to force that signature onto another person or onto another object, and that signature will penetrate said object or person, it's not weird to me, or it's not that far off what happens when we communicate and interact with one another, when we feed off of each other's energies and we give each other our vibrations, that you can do that to another person. For example, if you get the right frequency, you can shatter glass. You've done nothing to the glass but shoot frequency at it. So if you shoot frequency at me and that frequency happens to be the one that corresponds with a particular disease, I don't think that's so far out the realms of possibility to being something tangible, especially given the fact that good moods are infectious. Energy is infectious. The words we say to one another are infectious. There's been experiments on this that have been done. If you have 2 glasses of water, and 1 glass of water, you scream, you shout, you say horrible things to, and the other glass of water, oh, you're the best glass of water ever. Oh, you're so tasty. Oh, you're a beautiful glass. Then you look at those at the molecular level. The molecules are different now. The molecules are changed as a result of the energy that you've given onto it, and all you've done is speak to it, nothing else. You haven't even shaken the bottle.
And add to that we are incredibly resonant beings. It's one of the most wonderful things about us, but it's also, the Chinese have a saying, the bigger the front, the bigger the back. And what that means is that, yes, it's great that we're so resonant, but we can pick up resonances quite easily. And that's another part of how the diseases now are being actually transmitted through this wireless activity. I mean, you tend to think of the fact that our entire atmosphere now and all of our civilization is wireless as something to do with the technology of perhaps communications. And yes, it has to do with communications, visuals, auditory, messages that have to be sent militarily or just in one smart city to another. But actually, what if it also is about keeping our resonance on edge all the time as new frequencies are now being sent out to us in this transhuman move? It's changing us from the inside to the out. It isn't that the transhumanism is going to happen like Elon Musk's, what's he call it?
Neuralink. Yeah.
Neuralink. You don't need a surgical procedure for this. You don't need to be around someone who has Ebola. All you need is that frequency of Ebola is sent your way, and possibly, if it's done properly, you then will have the symptoms of Ebola. Did you catch it? No, you didn't catch it, unless you want to say that the transmission is something you're catching. But there is no virus that is being isolated anymore. And this is one of the big things that doctors are always talking. I'm working with doctors now, and this always comes up. Some believe in the virus. Some say there is no virus. Well, I studied Chinese medicine back in my 20s for 6 years, and I thought I was going to be a Chinese medical doctor, actually, but I turned a different way. But I have eaten that way. I still use yin yang in my mind because I was trained in what yin is basically yang is alkaline, yin is acidic. So that's one of the parts of how you define yin and yang. But there are many. There's up, down, in, out, over, under, white, red. There's so many qualities. But that idea that it's invisible, not as a virus, not as something from nature, which we've been taught a virus is. But the truth is, the virus has never been from nature. They made that up. I have not trusted Western science since since I studied Chinese medicine and was enlightened by a 5,000-year-old system that was so superior to all of this allopathic medicine of the West, which seems to be a business based on keeping you sick and just giving you modicums of wellness now and then. It's true that this makes sense to me right as soon as I heard it, that no, it's not about virus. And take the shedding that we hear about. Well, there is a shedding going on, but it has nothing to do with catching anything. It has nothing to do with molecular biology. It has everything to do with frequency being transmitted around you. If you pick up symptoms of, say, long COVID, as we're calling it now, we used to call it the flu, but well, there you go. So if you pick up those symptoms, it's not from a viral contagion. It's from the frequency being transmitted to someone probably who has gotten the jab, and maybe you haven't, but you are still receiving from the sky many of the same chemicals that Sunny mentioned that are all being decided upon by Big Pharma. Big Pharma is running the chemicals coming from the sky, from the chemtrails, and Big Pharma is running the chemicals that are going into people's bodies. So that's important to understand for the sixth one. That's digital biology, nanotechnology, and transhumanism. For nanotech, we're talking smaller than micro. That's basically it. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. But the nanotechnology, if I were to look at all these, Sonny, and say which one is the most dangerous, I would have to say the nanotechnology gets my bet, because we know the least about it. It's on the atomic level, much like the Manhattan Project was on atomic level. This, of course, would not end in the big A-bomb mushroom in the sky. This is the tiny world. This would end in extraordinary things that
sudden death, like we've seen for people post-jab.
Yes, that as long as they've been communicated to by something electromagnetic. I mean, that's coming from somewhere. That transmission is there, but you can't see it. I mean, it's the perfect criminal murder, isn't it? You don't have anything other than
the other
frequency.
problem is, because there is just so much around us, so many different frequencies bubbling about around us, you wouldn't even be able to tell if Joe Bloggs down the road was targeted, because there's no way to isolate the signal coming towards Joe Bloggs, because there's about a bazillion other things going on around them.
That's right, and that's how it works. For that, the Eric Drexler was the I think he was MIT. I can't remember what university, but he's sort of thought of as, or maybe it's an apocryphal story, but he is sold as the kind of like the guy that we believe invented Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. He too was a student at the time he supposedly invented Facebook. Truthfully, I really know
from
that
the CIA.
Oh,
it was
the CIA.
LifeLog. Yeah,
absolutely. And I
So-
would say that it's probably very similar for Eric Drexler, who is the one who invented nanotechnology, nanobots, nanorobots, and figured out how it would be done at an atomic level. You lay one atom next to another, next to another, next to another. So you have an atomic level event going on with this nanotechnology. Eric Drexler sat on that project and did not publish his PhD thesis on it for years, several years, because he also discovered that this technology, as great as it would be, where they make these cartoon movies now for children to pre-program them as to what nanotechnology can do. You see them being directed by computer to go and build a big skyscraper, to build a rocket, to build a road. So you think of it as something neutral or benign.
For a positive effect.
Yes, they don't tell you how it's used. And my favorite so far of what I have as visual is a clip from Jamie Lee, who is now dead, I'm sad to say, a great activist. Jamie covered the fires in California, and he did a film. He collected drone footage for a film he did on the Paradise, California fires, which completely destroyed the town of Paradise. And he, in film number 51, he has, I think, over 100. In film number 51, he's interviewing at the same time they're watching the footage from the drones of the fires being ignited, because the mystery there was a twofold mystery primarily. One was the trees were all fine, but the houses were completely immolated.
DEWs?
Huh?
Was it DEW?
Yeah. Wait, this is the part. Yeah, let me get to it. As you're watching the film, the nanomaterials PhD that's Jamie's interviewing at the same time, who's anonymous, by the way, for probably good reason, he's commenting on how these you see these embers that are ignited. They look like embers, and they're blowing around and going this way and going that. But then you notice there's method to their madness. They have like a Roman army phalanx, as is kind of going down the road and going into subdivisions of wealthy homes and going this way. And some of the bits that you think are embers are crawling up the wall of one house, and then soon it's ignited, while the others go on down the road and they skip the next house and they skip the next house and then they burn the other one. That sort of intelligence in them, that's nanotechnology. That's what it does. It works as a hive mind. You never have one nano doing something different from its fellows. It would always be working in league with them, and that's what proved to me how this works. That it is a super weapon, tremendous weapon, can be used for warfare, can be used for building things. But Eric Drexler called it primarily a biophage. And a biophage is something that eats the living. And if we have these in us, which we do, we have trillions in us. I would say that primarily we have nanosensors in us, would be the ones that I would think we have the most of. But we have definitely nanorobots or nanobots, and they are lodged in our various tissues.
Have we any proof of this, or any way to show this, or anything tangible?
Yes, that's what it's in our blood. That's the most tangible. Those are the doctors I'm working with now, primarily.
So what do they see in the blood?
Well, you see all manner of things that are tiny, and they one of the most shocking ones, that at least for me when I started this a couple of years ago, is the computer parts that are in us, and these are primarily from the jabs. You see circuit boards, you see routers.
Circuit boards.
Yeah,
right.
Circuit boards. They're circuit boards, and they have various carbon nanotubes, CNTs, in the blood is filled. It's just not our blood anymore.
Is there any way that this is published, that people can see that?
Yeah, there's plenty of pictures of it. Plenty. Thousands, millions, I don't know how many, because a lot of people are now examining living blood. You only have a few minutes. You take it out of the body, you put it on a slide, you put it under the microscope. You need a high-powered microscope, but not entirely out of the range of someone who has a decent amount of money, where you can see like a dark field microscope. And now you're going to see a whole lot of you're going to see a lot of crystal formation happening from just particulates. You're going to see hydrogel. You're going to see graphene oxide. You're going to see all these very new terms of entities, of things that are more machine than living. That's the important part. They're not really alive.
There's a reason that this is being done, though, right? Why?
Transhumanism. They're feeding us from the sky, and then they vaxed into the people who were vaxed with 1 to 2 vaxes. They have slipped into them possibly different things than you and I are breathing from the air, which has been has had all of this chemical stuff put into it.
The air has
on
been
a nanoscale.
I think terraforming is probably the easiest way to put it, is being terraformed.
No, the terraforming, I saved that term for the fire on Maui. I saved that term for North Carolina, where obviously we find out that in North Carolina, at least, it's the quartz and the lithium that they're after.
Big lithium deposit, yeah.
The big boys, as I call them. The big boys are after that. So they want to get all those people off their land. And maybe they even, chose the flood as a way to do certain chemical things to the land in order to set up an engineering thing there. So, yeah, I saved that for terraforming, Sonny, given that we are now in the throes of language, because you're never going to hear this language, particularly from the geoengineers. They're not going to be using this language. But we have to learn the synthetic biology language, because it's synthetic biology that's the name of the game, along with what I said, the digital aspect of transmission, electromagnetic transmission.
But then we come
These
back
are
to
things.
why. Why are they heading down this transhumanism route?
For the transhuman role, well, I think there are several reasons, but one I already named is that those pesky Van Allen belts.
Hmm.
That's one. And in a way, to me, that's a minor one. One of the most important is, can they create a life form that is not natural? You know, they have a patent for, let's see if I get this right. It's a patent for a living inorganic life, non-organic life. So, you know, that's why I'm going to be writing a book now on synthetic biology, because that's what they're really after, is a non-organic life where you can create life, but it's not God's, in other words. It's not nature's. It's an entirely different species, and they are the gods or the nature, the unnature that has created this alternate species. That's really what they're after. Yeah, they're going to do some enhancement. They're going to have some people are going to have big muscles and can run longer and live longer and are more handsome and beautiful, and you know, all those sorts of little cosmetic things. But really what they're after is an entirely new species that will adhere to the materialism of the planet, but not the life of the planet. This is anti-nature and anti-human, definitely.
Well, twofold. One, on the patenting of it, part of the reason is also because they cannot patent organic life. Naturally occurring organic life can't be patented, which is
That's right.
wild that they want to stick to some throes of law, considering
and that's the
everything
gain
else
of
that they're
function.
doing. Yeah.
And that's what I've realized when you see the word virus. Yeah, I'm doing quite a bit of reading now, as you can imagine. When I see the word virus, and I study the context in which it's being used, probably by the author still thinking there is a virus. There really is a virus, because he's bought the farm on that we've had for over 100 years. Not that long, actually, about 100 years. We really, before that, it really was much freer. There were many more theories about how pathogens or how illness worked. But since then, it's been the virus. The gain of function, I've realized that the word virus is being used specifically, it seems to me, for things that have been tampered with by the gain of function idea so that they can patent. I like the way the British say patent rather than patent. Yes, I think that's what it is. Gain of, at least that's how I'm going to handle it in the new book. I'm going to make sure that I make people realize, hey, you know, we're in a real bind here, because first of all, most of the books do not delineate between synthetic and natural anymore. They just say the name of the thing, that you're going to come in the medical terminology or in the, you know, however that is acceptable use. But they're obviously erasing the distinction, because they really have been attacking with the all of the different chemicals, the epigenetic approach to the earth, and the human body. We're breathing in all this stuff being delivered from the chemical trails. They obviously have been weakening our immune system of the human 1.0 or Homo sapiens in order to weaken it to such a degree that it simply is, well, simply a profit motive for the medical industry and pharmaceutical. But so they can now bring in human 2.0, which is actually a cybernetic model. And that's what's going on right now. And all I want, I feel so humble. All I want, and I'm working so hard about this to educate the public about the difference between natural and synthetic, is I want a human remnant, because I know this is just the beginning, Sonny. This is just the beginning of many, I don't know, centuries. Should I say that? This is going to be a long haul in which these less and less human scientists, and by human I mean less of
Human
those great
1.0.
qualities that we admire in humanity, in our saints and our the famous names of people who have done great things for humanity. We have this idea of human, and many people are being, that is being replaced in them with a very aseptic. I don't know the word, but a very impersonal,
Sterile, I think.
Sterile, yes,
Yeah.
very good, yes.
Yeah.
A sense of what they look human. There's a head, thorax, arms, legs. Yes, they act human. They have families. They have jobs, that sort of thing. But there's something missing, and empathy is where you will first begin to see it. The lack of empathy in these people, quote unquote. I'm not sure quite what they are.
To what ultimate end do they even need to do this? What's the purpose to patent us? What's the purpose of that? What's the grand reasoning behind it?
No, I don't think it's reasoning. I think it's something deeper. Do you believe that there is a divine world? That you came from when you were born?
I believe that we are something beyond our spirit. So our soul leaves the body, but I believe I am open to the idea that there is something even beyond the soul dimension as well. Because I'll briefly go over this because I think it's also very interesting. When we die, it's been measured. There is a certain amount of weight that's lost from the body. There's been films where a light has been seen. That's our soul leaving the body, and our soul goes to a dimension. We use the word dimension just for ease of conversation. And I think that there's something there, but also another layer above that dimension. The reason I think that is I feel like we're constantly brought back down onto planet Earth to learn from our mistakes. But if we have no recollection of it, how can we learn from our mistakes? That element of that story doesn't make sense. David Icke talks about this. So I think there's another breakaway layer that we can possibly get to, which is then,
but it's spiritual,
quote unquote, divine.
And,
yes,
and it has to do with our consciousness.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So to get to why the masters of the universe, I call them with a smirk.
Yeah.
What the masters of the universe are after is to thumb their noses at God, whatever you think God is. God could be the universe. God could be the force behind the universe, whatever. And that they can really eradicate the human soul. I mean, even let's see, I've got it right here. Rudolf Steiner, exactly 100 years ago, actually, said, in the future, we will eliminate the soul with medicine under the pretext of a healthy point of view. There will be a vaccine by which the human body will be treated as soon as possible, directly at birth, so that the human being cannot develop the thought of the existence of soul and spirit. That's it.
This is what we were just saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the big one. That's the big potato, or whatever that phrase is. That's the one they really want, because they're not called Luciferians for nothing. Lucifer refused to obey God in the myth. I personally like the myth of the Quran regarding the Lucifer, the fallen angel. He's called Iblis in the Quran. And that's where he says to God says, you must serve my creature man. And Iblis says to God, I will serve only you. I will not serve your creature. And that rebel angel does not, as Rudolf Steiner said, that the gods, for the gods, their religion is man, is the human being, because we are the only spiritual being in a physical body, in a physical world, dealing with the ravages of time, that is attempting to live by free will and to love God by free will, not fear. Did you understand that?
I do.
It's a mouthful.
But then my question, I know we've come off transhumanism quite far, but my question is, do you think that we're actually in a physical world, or do you think that we're already in an element of a simulation? Because this is also something that I've been
Well, yes, I think
battling with, and I think we're trying
I'm
to go
glad you.
deeper into a simulation
No, I'm
with the
glad you brought
metaverse.
that up. I think we are in the simulation now at the beginning phase of it, and Rudolf Steiner calls this the eighth sphere. You know, there are 7 basic spheres in the planetary system. This is the eighth sphere. It's not physical. It's well, it's digital, isn't it? It's frequency. And there are many of us. I'm thinking right now of a young man I've been observing in my apartment building. There are many of us who are not really living a material life at all, but are completely captivated by the electronic life and are living electronic lives now that are minus humans, minus acts in the human world, but have ultimate disdain for both of those things, for living in the world as a daily humdrum kind of person, eating, sleeping, going to the bathroom, and that sort of thing.
Normal things for humans to do.
Yes, and is instead defining himself. Well, yes, as an avatar. I suppose he has an avatar name. I haven't asked him, but he's living another life, and I think he resents the body he has to drag around with him while he's living in that simulated world. Yeah, I think it's already started.
Interesting. I again work in healthcare, physical therapy. I see lots of people from lots of different walks of life, and it is something I'm seeing more and more of people that are that the two extremes. Some people that are going further and further on the technology route, but I'm really happy to see a lot of people pulling back from the technology and missing human interaction. And sometimes they don't realize it at that point in time. But then we start talking, and when people are on my table or when they're in the gym with us, that element of human interaction for that half hour, that might be the most human interaction without a screen that some of these people get. And they walk out with such an elated feeling. And that elated feeling isn't because of anything any more special than that natural occurrence of human interaction. And it is something that I'm starting to see with some of the younger generation that they're just not able to do. They're just not able to function without one of these things blowing up their faces at all points of time. Like it's scary to think that life is becoming a Black Mirror episode at times. That's
Well,
that dystopian future.
Is. Yeah, I think it is, and I want to call your attention to the other element that yes, we can't see it, but except unless we have a microscope and we're looking at live blood, as I've described, you see the nanotechnology there. It's everywhere in the blood. It's everywhere. It's the most that's the most populous bit that you see in blood now, and not the red blood cells. You hardly see them; they're being replaced. And eventually, we have self-assembling nanotechnology, which will take the place of our nerves, for example. Our nervous system will be. That's why I call it silicon. I don't know that it'll be silica that is primarily in it, but whatever that is, and the most interesting inhabitant of both worlds, of the simulated world and our world, our physical world. Have you ever heard Harald Kautz, the German scientist. You must listen to him. Harald is sort of a friend. I've never met him, but we have done a lot of internet from time to time. But Harald is talking about black goo, and it's a very silly name for something that I don't think is silly at all. Black goo. It's in a lot of the movies now, and I think that's all part of a pre-programming. It's said to be part of the petroleum realm that we get our oil and the things we need for these particular car engines that we have. But it also is now thought of as where graphene oxide comes from. Are you familiar with the term graphene oxide?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So, and graphene oxide is called the Holy Grail by American scientists. They can do so many things with it, and it's cheap, and it's a carbon. And so the graphene oxide appears to have a consciousness of its own. And that's what I mean by now we need to take a good look at this nanotechnology, because graphene oxide is nanotechnology. We need to take a good look at it because it's made at the atomic level. That's the key. And at the atomic level, we're almost to the other dimensions, the ones that CERN purportedly has opened up with its D-wave computer to different dimensions. And now we have entities coming into the Earth plane through that activity of the D-wave computer, which Jordy, I can't remember Jordy's last name, but he was the tech CEO at D-Wave Computers. And Gordy said that when he was in the presence of the D-Wave computer, which is by the way, a quantum computer, very important, that he felt that he was standing at the altar of an alien god. And he was not, I did not at all get the feeling he was waxing eloquent. He was trying to be exact about how he felt. The intelligence of the D-wave quantum adiabatic, I'm not sure I'm saying that word right, computer. So yes, that realm is growing as our relationship with nature shrinks. And so, we now have in us trillions of nanotech bots, and they are in touch with the electromagnetics that is outside of us. So if a kid is sitting at his computer playing video games all day and all night, the nanotech in him is recording all of that, and is self-assembling and growing because it's being fed electromagnetics nonstop. This is the problem with our obsession and appetite and addiction for electromagnetics that is invisible. Most of us can't feel it coming, like me with my computer screen here. I've got all sorts of devices normally around it that sort of ameliorate my situation. But on the other hand, I'm under no illusion. I'm being radiated. And so by that happening, there's like an open door there that is being stimulated by and is stimulating the electromagnetic presence in my blood, in my body. And that's being plugged in. That's what in my books I call being plugged into the space fence, because the space fence, that's a term that Lockheed Martin has for what we probably term the smart grid. And we are in the smart grid. We are plugged into the space fence. There is no question whether we're trying to stay safe or not. I don't own a TV. I don't own a cell phone. I don't own any electromagnetics with high capacity, high frequency, like my computer. It's enough. I'm not sure how well I'm balancing that, but I am trying to stay alive and keep the radiation at a minimum.
You mentioned the occult. You've mentioned Lucifer. Why don't we touch briefly on what role that the occultists have to play here, and then we can go from there, I think, into what's happening in the world around us today in terms of how we're being guided down this rabbit hole as well. Because from the geoengineering, such a small portion of this, you start down that rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland, and this journey goes pretty deep, pretty far, and then we come to the people that are purported by many in both the alternative media, mainstream media, as the heroes and the flag bearers, the torch bearers to carry us through this. One of the big ones I've mentioned previously already, Elon Musk, is someone that a lot of people allude to as someone who's going to help us. It's not true. We'll get to that. There are other people as well leading through the Silicon Valley tech element. But what does the occult have to do with this? What is their role in the transhumanist agenda? How can we, unravel that and weave that into the story that we're hearing so far?
I always try to bring up the occult because, I had an experience of Christ in a classroom when I was 25 years old. I didn't know it was Christ at that point, but a few days later, it finally identified itself in me. And I had to go and ask people if a presence said to you, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," who is that? Because I was not raised in a Christian home, or I knew nothing about Christianity really. And then I realized it had actually been Christ, and then began my quest. Because up to that, I'd just been looking for an experience of God. I really wanted to experience God before I died. That was my big thing when I was a kid and when I was a youth. And then I had that experience at 25, and then I went from there, and I encountered Rudolf Steiner very, very quickly after that by reading. I was on my way to China with a letter of introduction to a great Chinese doctor. I was going to be a Chinese doctor, Chinese medicine doctor, and I ended up not going. But I was waiting there in the islands. And that's where I read a book called The Way of a Child by A.C. Harwood, which is about a Waldorf school curriculum put together by Rudolf Steiner. So that was my first introduction. I didn't know he was an occultist. I didn't really think about occult things, though the 60s were permeated with them, permeated with references to occult this, occult that. And I think that was the CIA. Utilizing my generation, but that doesn't mean we're lost, because the occult simply means hidden, and the occult has been around for thousands and thousands of years, usually in the grip of men and women who have decided they are the keepers of the flame. They are the keepers of wisdom, and people aren't wise enough to really receive these truths, so they hide them. That's where the term occult came from. So what is the occult? Well, there was a time when even magnetic force was considered the occult. There was a time when the blood was seen as having bearing upon occult occurrences. Yes, it can be simply that we don't understand the mechanisms, we don't understand the laws, the physics of things, so we immediately think it's kind of
magic. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
like
often said that any technology that is sufficiently more advanced than our own will appear as magic.
As magic.
Imagine
like
if
Arthur
we
Clarke,
yeah.
And that's that. So when I encountered Steiner, it was primarily, I thought of him in a sense of education, because he was trying to build people who had thinking, feeling, and willing. These were the three qualities in childhood. From the very beginning, we don't have thinking at the beginning. We're just an infant, but we have willing, We can cry and cry and cry in order to get our food. We can stamp our foot and refuse to do something.
Oh, I've
That
got a
sort of
toddler.
will.
He's definitely got some
Yes,
will.
toddler, yes. And then the next one was feeling, and then finally thinking. Thinking being in a way, the most enigmatic of all three, because thinking today is thought of as intellect. It's thought of as intellectual. A lot of people think I'm an intellectual. Well, I have been an intellectual, but I like to think of myself now as having been through the Rudolf Steiner course, in which I now can think with my heart, for example. So I have brought these two together, whereas it used to be that I simply was this. So I didn't feel anything. I didn't have any empathy or anything. I mean, I was for all intents and purposes not human. But now I have the two together, and I'm producing quite wonderful things, I feel. All right, so the occult can be dark and it can be light. Does it serve humanity? Well, then it's light. Does it attack humanity and attempt to take human beings' power from them? Well, then it's dark. I mean, it's kind of that simple. And today we are seeing more. I'm 77 now. I can say to you that this time, more than any other time in my life, when I see the activity out here and read the politics of what's going on and see the personalities that are being rewarded with this, that, and the other, it's the most obvious and manifest that dark occultists, i.e. Satanists, i.e. God haters, i.e. humanity haters, have ever been in my life. They have always disguised themselves. They have always sort of been in the shadows. You never see them. And now it's everywhere. And the children, the pedophile activity is huge now. And it was hidden before.
It's
And
become
now we know.
emboldened. These
Very
people
emboldened.
have become emboldened because they
Yeah.
have had control of everything from politics to media to Hollywood to radio and music to social media at this point. And I think this comes back to which point was it? Surveillance. So of the 7 parts of geoengineering, comes back to part 5, where this surveillance, which is every bit of media that we're fed, leads into some element of control of the populace. I think what those in charge, the people that consider themselves to be better than God, are not realizing the fact that they don't have the full spectrum dominance, so to speak. They don't have the full control over the people around them. If they did, there wouldn't be people like you and I, or the David Ickes of the world, who are willing to both speak up and stand up and talk about the things going on around them. So, with that said, then we've got people like Musk, who, like you say, are being rewarded. He is a bastion for people, and again, I have this conversation with my clients here at my work. The fact that no, he's a good guy. He keeps talking about being pro-human, etc., etc. But then when you look at the things that he wants to make us transhuman. He wants to put chips in our bodies, and like you said, actually, they don't need to do a surgery to put a chip in you. It can be injected into you. Look at what happened in Sweden.
Well, you're breathing them in. You're breathing them in.
You're breathing them in as well. This can all be controlled in that sense. Then you look at the fact that, he wants things like universal basic income. That's also a way to implement control over everybody, a more literal sense of control. He also wants carbon credits. He wants to tax the thing we're goddamn well made up of. He wants to tax our ability to even use stuff. That's not pro-human in any sense of the word. People say he's a bastion of free speech. Actually, his words are freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. Even if you're on his Twitter platform, that doesn't mean you're going to reach a million ears or eyes in that sense. What he is more about is censorship. We've seen that with his platform. Censorship is higher under his leadership than it ever was before. And not only that, global censorship, takedowns by governments. There have been more okayed requests by governments. And any time he puts up a quote unquote fight, like he did with Brazil, he backs down anyway. He puts up 2 weeks worth of fight, and then slowly, when nobody's looking, he'll back off and say, "All right, yeah, we'll do the things that you want." Maybe once or twice he'll
No,
stand up.
I mean, what you're describing is all true, and he is an insider. And Trump has also self-admitted to being an insider. All right, so we've got two insiders. Robert Kennedy is not far behind, but he is definitely more genuine, I would say, as a personality. But he is a Kennedy, and he has these insiders have to me, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. If they have anything still human in them, then that is calling for attention. At the same time that they have to obey these strictures, because just the fact, a lot of people think that when you're rich, you have a lot of power over anything of your own. Not true with the rich. I've known two very, very wealthy people, and their lawyers pretty much run everything and make the decisions, and their board makes the decisions. They have to obey these strictures or things happen to them. All you have to do is remember Howard Hughes, owner of Hughes Aircraft, and the story that Mae Brussels, a fantastic researcher, told about what happened to Howard and how he was basically controlled and killed after several years. They only needed his signature for all the things, the wealth they stole from him. So, I don't see that as anything to admire or envy. It's a hard life situation. But does it make sense that Trump would have insiders around him? Yes, it does. Nothing's going to be perfect in this. It's going to be compromise. It's going to be not what it seems. You can count on that. And for me, I'm in the, I don't really bandy words much with people about who to trust and who not to trust. I trust Trump because he's the prettiest girl at closing time, because he's the only girl at closing time. And that means that, in order to get rid of the deep state, which I am sick to death of, I've had it all my life since Kennedy was shot down like a dog in Dallas and the coup d'etat happened then. All my life has been plagued with this deep state. I want somebody who's going to change the format, at least.
But he's picked everyone deep state to fill every position of his cabinet. The only one that's non-deep state, or there were two that were going to be non-deep state. There was going to be Matt Gaetz, who has since had to step down, and RFK Jr. But even then, with these boys not being deep state, okay, Matt Gaetz notwithstanding, RFK Jr. swears fealty to Israel, as does the rest of his campaign.
That's why I say
this is the problem. Like,
you're looking. No, I think the problem is that we think that what we see is what is. I don't think that at all. I know something is going on, but I also know that, as I've said many times on radio shows, Trump's favorite book is one of my favorite books, which is The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Great book.
And if you read that book, you're talking subtlety of warfare. You are not talking, you put something out there, you chose so-and-so, we know exactly why you chose so-and-so. I don't know. I don't know why these people have been chosen. I know that where Trump is, he's got half the military for him, half the military against him. I mean, why this person? If I were in the privy with God, I would say, God, why this person, this firebrand, this bull in the China shop? Why him, this redheaded guy? So I don't know, but I'm watching with great interest, because in this lifetime anyway, I am not a primary. I am not in the front. I don't have to carry that burden that these guys have to carry. I'm just watching to see what they do and trying to educate the public about something that's very important. I mean, the whole time that Trump was president from 2016 to 2020, I was waiting for him to say something about geoengineering and nothing. Nobody, what's the word? They didn't tell him about it. Robert Kennedy. I sent Robert Kennedy my book, Geoengineering Transhumanism, because a friend of his is a friend of mine. And I hear he got it, but I'm not sure. His staff got it. But he also had a Mossad agent on his staff that they found much later. So I've done what I can from my back row or back tier
Yeah.
place. And meanwhile, I watched the show, and it is a show. You're
Well, let's
right.
not forget, Trump also okayed Operation Warp Speed, and he still talks about the jab
He
as if it
was
was a good thing.
no, anyway, let's not go into the detail because he was misinformed over and over and over again because this was not a politician. This was a businessman thrust into this incredibly incendiary political position that even an expert in politics would have been challenged by. He was a dope thrown into a bull ring with things that he had never fought. So I'll give him that. And then then we had this 4 years, which supposedly of clown show, right?
Oh
Real
God.
clown show.
Yeah,
I'm told that this was so the American people could actually see what this really was. Oh, maybe that's true. But maybe not. I mean, was it a deal with the Satanists that they get to have 4 years to do their chaos? And now, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. So now comes order. I mean, was it all set up by the two factions together? I don't know. I really don't.
like you say, he was the only goal at closing time, especially when the other option was,
Yeah.
oh, Kamala. Don't get me started.
And the
Kamala,
other one was Hillary. He was the only girl at closing time then, too.
So I do hope something positive comes out of it, but I'm not holding my breath. But then
I know.
What do we do as, I can't stop the chemicals from being rained down on me from above. I can do my best to try to limit my electromagnetic radiation exposure. There are certain stones and things that you can wear to help absorb it. But how can we help ourselves? Because at the end of the day, I'm not waiting for one of these clowns from on high to try to save me, because it's not happening. This isn't World War II.
No,
the blue coats aren't coming.
And that's what's wonderful about this situation. At least, I'm pulling at scraps and bits and pieces to say wonderful, but it is that we still have those of us who don't have the mind control. Now, I know people, a lot of targeted people contact me because of what I write. I know people who can't even hear their own thoughts anymore because the voice to skull is so deep in them. From where are you going to find these cowards hiding and taking over people's brains? So I still have my good brain. I still have, I am targeted from time to time as a reminder of who's really the master here, I suppose. But basically, I'm fine. So I see it that you and I and other people who don't have the voice to skull and satellite mind control in their head are plugged in, yes, to a degree, and we still have our own thoughts. We still have our own volition. We still have a chance at our own free will. So we must attend to our lives, our individual lives, because now, in my opinion, and this is just from my studies of geoengineering and what's being done and synthetic biology, in my opinion, I'm fighting for a remnant of humanity, because I think a lot of people are not going to take responsibility for themselves. And the real human beings are going to have to really strengthen themselves now and take life very seriously, that these are These are choices. It isn't a matter of, oh, I want, for me, I wanted to be the next Anais Nin, the next greatest fiction writer. Well, that's gone by the wayside now because there's a greater need in my lifetime for someone who can write what I write, is how I read the lines. So we need to do that and not wait for an expert to convince us. We won't have a Gandhi or a Jesus Christ or anyone who will be able to tell us what to do now. We have to find a way to keep this individual who is not hive mind, to keep this individual. And meanwhile, the theater is going on. And if there's a place where we definitely feel we have a role to play, we will then step forward and have a role to play. But otherwise, to me, it's just all gossip. But we have to analyze what's going on so that we can have. I have this fantasy that I want to die with as few lies in my soul as possible, with the most truth in my soul as possible. That's one of my great desires in this life. So I will concentrate on that, pay attention to this, keep track of everything, but really not get too emotionally anything about a lot that's going on, because I know that I don't know the whole story of what's going on in the back room. Because America has been, all my life, it's been about the back room, ever since the National Security Act of 1947, which is the year I was born in. It has been, the back room has been running everything in this nation. And I tell you, I'm tired of it. I want real courage, real people that stand up for the great qualities of humanity, not these sordid, cowardly ones. And that's all I've had all my life, is that. So I've analyzed as much as I can to help as many people as I can in an era that doesn't read. I mean,
Makes it tougher.
I'm really writing for 50 years down the road, or maybe even 100 years, I don't know. But someday, some people are going to read and go, why were so few books written on the relationship of geoengineering and synthetic biology? I mean, here's this one book by this little old lady up in the Pacific Northwest of America. Why? I'm the only person writing about this. Although I have Anna Mihalcha, the MD, one of the two MDs I work closely with. She has now written a book about her discoveries through the microscope in the blood. So, and it's quite good.
Okay, fantastic. I suppose then the long and short of it is we've got to keep on keeping on without getting roped up into all the dramas of the things happening around us. And when the opportunity presents itself to break away. But just make sure you keep your head about you. Don't get trapped into a 1984 or a Brave New World style hive mind ideology.
Right. Just after you throw out your TV and your cell phone.
That's a tough one.
I know.
Yeah. Now you're asking a lot. Have you got any the final bits to say on the transhumanism element? Well,
I didn't tell you the seventh operation.
Oh, yes. So
the seventh operation after digital biology, nanotechnology, and transhumanism is the cloaking / obscuration and detection of exotic propulsion craft and plasma life forms. And that is what I told you earlier, is they're working on that because they know that Reich and whatever his name is are right about the fact that there are entities in the environment, and who knows what their role is. I don't know what their role is. I know that the propulsion craft, we got that from the paperclip Nazis, and we've had it all these years. It has nothing to do with off-planet anyway. The fact that many of the ancient paintings, such as in the 1300s, in Italy, maybe more, are loaded with flying saucers, and they are. Yes, what can I say about that? I think that I love the thought that the Akashic record, are you familiar with that term? Akashic record, it's an occult term for the memory of humanity. It goes back to the Vedas that were written thousands of years ago, Indian sacred books.
A Hindu text, yeah.
Hindu, and this Akashic record is actually twofold. First of all, it's all the way around the planet, all the memories. If you have the right machinery, I suppose you could access all of that. Let me hang up then. And then it's also purportedly around our head. My lifetimes, my memories, which go back many, many lifetimes, is around my head, and the right person can read it. Now, I have had that happen, not with my permission. So if that is true, then this is a reenactment with the paperclip Nazis.
Well, this is one of the things that Tesla used to say. Tesla would say that he didn't have his ideas. These were ideas that he just happened to be tuned into the right frequency, the right vibration. And there we go again. Humans, we are frequency. What's around you is your frequency. And I was speaking to someone recently who reads faces, and that's what she spoke about. She spoke about being in the right frequency to be able to do that, to be able to get their record, their history. And she did some digging into myself, and I was pretty shocked and amazed at some of the things that she said to me. And I was like, yeah, okay. I think more and more so I'm becoming open to these ideas, but for sure. You brought up the Vedas there, and like you say, there's this ancient technology that has existed on this planet, and whether there are elements of off-world or not, I don't know, but I know for sure, like you say, we've had this technology. You know, let's not forget the Nazi scientists were some of the smartest scientists. I would say easily arguable they were the smartest scientists at that point in time. Had it not been for their technological advancements, we'd all be stuffed. If we look at it this way, upwards of, I think it's either 70 or 80% of Hitler's army was fueled by synthetic oil. That was oil that they had produced and made themselves through reactions through the Fischer-Tropsch process. Now, that's not done by dopes down the road. There's a reason that America wanted all these scientists, the UK took all these scientists, and they were all given a complete blank slate and given other names. You know, there's a cartoon called Archer. It's one of those adult cartoons. And there's a scene where one of the characters, the head spy master, says, hey, you know, why don't you just go walking into NASA and shout Heil Hitler and watch everybody stand up? And that's because so much of NASA was ex-Nazi scientists. So
well, and is the generational thing. No, and the Nazis,
the Germans lost, but the Nazis didn't.
You asked me about the occult, NASA.
Oh, NASA. Hitler loved the occult too.
Yeah, but NASA is run by occultists. So anyway, I wanted to say something about the Vimanas, and these were called Vimanas. But yes, it looks like saucers. It looks like technology, but I'm not sure it is, because a lot of these entities that Reich and I can't remember his name, took photos of with infrared film. I encountered one of those, and it looked like I was out of body. I was sleeping, and I was standing out in my backyard when I used to own a house here in the Northwest. And here came a what looked like a saucer. I could hear the engine, and then it was above me about probably 20 to 30 feet. But I was out of body, remember? But it was no dream. It was not a dream. So I'm standing there and I'm looking at it. And then I see the portholes on it. It's shaped like a ship. I see the portholes, and then I see the portholes are actually breathing there. And I realize, oh my gosh, those are Orioles. This is an organic being, because that's what Reich said. These are machines, yes, but they are also organic, he said. And that's was my experience of this. I didn't I could tell from a distance that the sheath of the vehicle, the vessel, was like shark skin, because I used to dissect sharks in college, and I remember how like sandpaper the outer is. And as I'm watching it, I suddenly realize that there's a consciousness in that entity that's over me now, hovering. And I realized that if I had been afraid of it, which I was not, interestingly, I actually felt I had called it, because I wanted to encounter one of these things I kept hearing about. And but if I had been afraid, it might have abducted me. That's very possible. But it was organic. That's the important part. And it was a machine. It had machine qualities to it. So I think that's what a Vimana was it was actually both a machine and organic. Because, okay, so it
Could we say
finally...
transorganic then? Much like we're trying to create transhuman.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. But still that machine element. So then it shot off into the west, and the next morning I went outside, and there was a burned area all the way around where I had been standing. And it was definite radiation. So did the military send it for me? Was it just from the creatures in the sky, like Trevor Constable said it was? I don't know. But I did see one, and that's what I'm saying, is that those medieval paintings may not have been actual technology per se, but may have been one of these species. Because I think there are many species that, because of our very narrow aperture, we really can't see.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, as I think you and I take for granted the fact that we dive into these topics, so people might hear that and just think you were sleeping, but you weren't. It was out of body. What? To make this again more tangible for people, all you have to do is look up the CIA's remote viewing experimentation. That was literal out-of-body experiences where what they would do is they would have people on other sides of the world and ask one person to view a particular set of coordinates on another element of the planet, and they would be able to describe this down to a T. And some of these experiments were done onto other planets. Some of these experiments were done on an area known as the Black Pyramid. I think that's is it in the North Pole or Alaska or something like that, which is a secure site that people aren't supposed to know about. This is just fact at this point. These are declassified CIA documents that people can go and have a look at before you dismiss it out of hand, or just think, okay, these two have probably been smoking a little bit too much of the Cheech and Chong. They're off on a different planet. No, this is a learned skill that humans can do. It's just, again, what you said earlier about our humanity being taken away. I oftentimes think that with all this technology around us, not just the humanity is taken away, but the other gifts that we have as humans are slowly being sucked out of us as well.
That is the humanity.
Traits. Yeah,
that is the humanity. And don't forget, I'm the granddaughter of a Romanian gypsy. I think I have a little bit of that looseness that Steiner talks about. Some people have a looseness of their astral body, and it can lift out. Now, I don't always have that. I haven't had those experiences for many years, but I have had quite a few for a period where, yes, lifting out, going past the moon, going into deep space. Yes, this is all human. These are all human abilities. And the remote viewing is simply a modern element of it that I have been told by a remote viewer always has to do with computers. That's the problem with it. It has computers in it, which is why I'm really not that interested in it. But it is a form of clairvoyance, I suppose, where you're out of body. I'm sure many people. We all go out of body every night.
I think it's you mentioned it earlier as well. The plasma, that plasma that connects all of us, our spirit is able to traverse that plasma. You know, there's evidence to say within mainstream science that plasma is a smart entity, that plasma has consciousness. You know, that space isn't in fact empty, that space is full of plasma, and that accounts for a lot of that missing mass that people talk about. You mentioned right at the start, an hour and a half ago, that the sun is made up of plasma.
Yes.
You know, that there's all of this that has been stolen from us, because in my school we weren't taught that. We weren't taught nothing about no plasma.
And it's hard for people to realize that concepts are stolen from us, and when they're stolen from us, they, you know, we don't know things.
It dulls what we can know. It dulls our
it dulls us.
Yeah.
Like ether, it was taken out of our scientific lexicon in the 1920s. Without ether, we've misunderstood so many things. So anyway, I don't know. Am I talking too much?
No. What would you say as your final tips for someone with regards to transhumanism and escaping the quote unquote matrix? And I think that might be a good place to
and I want to say that the fourth book, the Geoengineered Transhuman, will be out from Inner Traditions on February 4th, 2025.
Okay.
And I recommend you get it from the Rudolf Steiner bookstore in Seattle, Washington.
Do they do international shipping?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
And his little bookstore is in the very backyard. I mean, it's very sweet. All right. So here's what I would say. Given that you all get a sense of who I am, and that my imagination is alive and well, I see humanity as being on a tremendous path of individuation, of learning how to handle our free will. And yet we are all now plugged into a digital world, that you were calling simulated, sentient simulation. Yes, but if we can just pay attention, not be completely taken over by our technologies, really be absolutely honest with yourself as to how much you control your technology and how much your technology controls you, and take back your human life and really examine everything from a point of view of, does it make me more human or does it make me less human? And set your course for the right way in that, and hold fast to it, to set an example for the young who are always watching us. I used to be a high school and college teacher, so I know the young go by our example, not by what we say. So that would be my hope.
Strong words. And where can people find you, or find out more about you, or find some of your other works?
Well, I comment, yes, the Rudolf Steiner bookstore carries everything, all my books, including a series I never talk about, which I think a lot of people would enjoy. It's about the 60s. It's about what happened to America after Kennedy was shot down. It's called the Sub Rosa America, A Deep State History. 4 books, really history books, but in a 60s format of people I really have known. I think it has a cult following of about 300, I would guess 300 or 400 people. I've never sold it really. But it's up. It's up on Amazon. I self-published it. And my other books are all at that little bookstore in the backyard. I post every day on Facebook. Allows me one site, EMF Planetary Engineering. You have to be a member, and I'll definitely let everybody in. And then I have a Patreon site that I also comment on, Elana Freeland Patreon. And that's it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Elana, thank you so very much for your time
Thanks
again.
for having me again.
Always appreciate it. And we'll catch you soon.